So let's look at these remaining problems. We're just going to put them up here on the whiteboard. So the first thing we have on number 4 is 5p squared minus 2p minus 3. Now, here's what we talked about last time. The instructions are to factor, okay? And what is the very first thing we're supposed to check for to see if we can do? Remember? Look for a common factor. If we have a common factor that's greater than 1, we want to factor it out. How many terms are here? 3. Do you see a common factor other than 1 with all of these terms? No, I've got a 5, a 2, and a 3 for the numbers. 1 is the only thing that goes into those, and I don't have p's everywhere. So I can't factor out a GCF. That means that I now look at the fact there are 3 terms, and I'm going to try to use the AC method. Now, somebody tell me, what's my A value? 5. What is my C? -3. Very good, because here's what we said last time was, let's see if it'll let me write up here. No, it will not. So I'll just write over here that ax squared plus bx plus c is standard form. So that means when I have it in descending order, that number or coefficient in front of the x squared is my a value. That's why we pulled out a 5 for a. And the constant at the end is my c value. And remember, the sign in front of a number stays with a number. So this equals what when I multiply those together? -15. Now, what does that tell me? I'm going to look for 2 numbers that when I do what, I get -15. My choice is either add or multiply. It's multiply. If I multiply here, that means my numbers are going to multiply to give me a -15. Now, tell me what you know. If I'm looking for 2 numbers and when I multiply, I get a negative, what do you know about their signs? They're different. So I'm going to have one that's negative, one that's positive. Now, what's the B value in this? Say again? -2. So what that tells me is not only should my numbers multiply to give me -15, but they should add to give me -2. Okay, what's the right pair? Yeah, I don't have many options to multiply to get 15. It's either 1 and 15 or 5 and 3. And the pair that would add up to give me -2 is going to have to be 5 and 3. But I've got to figure out, does that mean it's a -5 positive 3 or it's a -3 positive 5? -5 positive 3. Remember, if I'm adding up and the signs were different, my answer took the sign of the larger number. So since it's a -2, 5 has to be negative, 3 has to be positive. Now, what should I do just to double check and make sure I really get this right? If I multiply these 2 together, do I get -15? Yes. If I add these 2 together, do I get -2? That means I have the right pair. Now, here's the tricky part. What do I do with that pair? That is exactly right. He said we got to plug it in for B. We're going to replace B and make it 2 terms instead of 1 term. This is not going into the parentheses, and you'll see this here in a second. So I copy down the first term, but then I'm going to put a -5p plus 3p in place of the -2p. Now, the reason I'm doing that is because, first of all, is -5p plus 3p the same thing? Does it mean the same thing as -2p? Yes. So I'm replacing it with something that's equivalent. And by changing it from 3 terms to 4 terms, it's going to give me, let's see, I guess I don't have an option on color. So, okay, we'll just keep with that. And it's going to give me the ability now to factor out the greatest common factor for each pair. So if I look at the first set, what's my GCF? What would be my common factor between 5p squared and -5p? 5p. And then in parentheses, what would we have? 5p times what gives me 5p squared? P. What do I write down next? Now watch that sign. I need to multiply 5p times something to get a negative 5p. What would that need to be? Minus 1. Okay, as long as this is a positive for my GCF, this sign is going to get matched here. What needs to happen next? We got to bring down this sign. So I need a plus sign. And what's my GCF for the second pair? Just 3. And if I pull out a 3 as the GCF, what goes in parentheses? P minus 1. Now, I'm doing this because what am I hoping? What should happen if I'm doing this right? These two should match, right? And that becomes my new GCF because this plus sign separates it into 2 terms. This is now my new common factor, the p minus 1. And what goes in the other parentheses? The 5p plus 3. We actually did that one last time, didn't we? Or did we not? No, we didn't do that one. Okay, I could not remember if we had done that one or not. How do I know this is done correctly? If I use FOIL or the box to multiply, it should give me back what I started with. So if I put p minus 1 here, and I put 5p plus 3 here, p times 5p is 5p squared. P times 3, 3p. Negative 1 times 5p is a negative 5p. And negative 1 times 3 is what? A negative 3. So if I pull out like terms, I get my 5p squared. What happens if I add a positive 3p and a negative 5p? How much is that? Positive 3p plus negative 5p is? Negative 2p. And then a minus 3 on the end. Is that what I started with? It checks.
Doesn't matter which way you want to do it.
Like, could you put 5p plus 3 here?
No,
Oh, in here, over here. If you put 5p plus 3 first, p minus 1 second, perfectly okay. The order of the parentheses doesn't matter. You just have to be sure what's in the parentheses matches, okay? Now, how many of you say, I still think I can go from here to here, and I don't have to write all that out, even if this is not a 1. Do I have anybody that says, I really don't need this method? I've got this factoring thing without it. Okay, so here's what I'm going to tell you. If you see the shortcut for when the A is 1, use it, all right? If you have trouble trying to just open up parentheses and play with numbers and see if you can come up with the right pair, this is a system that will work every time when you're trying to factor something that the A is not 1, because those are a little harder to figure out how to get done. Okay, let's do another one. So we're going to look at 5. And on 5, we have negative 4x squared plus 2x plus 30. Okay, so somebody talk to me about what we might want to do first. Excellent, let's look for one. Do we have a GCF other than 1? He says no. What do y'all think? I think you're right. All these numbers are even, so we are going to be able to pull out a 2. Now, do I want to pull out a positive 2 or a negative 2? How would I decide? Remember what we talked about last time? What kind of sign am I going to want in front of the x squared after I've taken out my GCF? I want it to be positive. So since this is a negative 4x squared, what would need to be factored out? A positive 2 or a negative 2? I want to factor out a negative 2 because I want this to be positive 2x squared. I really don't want a negative in front of the x squared. Okay? Now, carefully tell me what would come after 2x squared in the parentheses. Negative 2 times what gives you positive 2x? Okay, he says either negative x or negative 1x. Do y'all agree with that? Because a negative times what sign gives me a positive? A negative. So that's why it's going to have to be, and you can put the 1 there if you want. If you choose to just put negative x, that's fine too. And then what's going to go at the end? Negative 2 times what gives you positive 30? Does it need to be positive or negative 15? Good. A negative times a negative gives us a positive. So we need a negative 15 there. So far, are we okay? Now, here's what I would encourage you to do. This negative 2, I'm not really going to do anything else with it, but I don't want to lose it. It's going to be part of my answer. So I'm going to put the negative 2 down here, and I'm going to open up my 2 sets of parentheses, and I'm going to try to figure out what should go in those 2 sets of parentheses. And that's going to come from just working with this to see if I can get it factored. Now, in other words, we said, don't really pay any attention to this negative 2 anymore. Just look at this. So what would my A be? It's a positive 2 now. What would my C be? Negative 15. If I multiply those, what do I get? That's a negative 30. And if it's negative 30, talk to me again about signs. Same or different? If I multiply and I get a negative, I know they're different. So that means one's going to have to be a negative, one's going to be a positive. All right, what else do I need to look at so then I can figure out something about the numbers? B, what is B? It's a negative 1. Okay, so if I'm multiplying 2 numbers and I'm supposed to get negative 30 when I multiply, but I add them and I get negative 1, what would it have to be? What are my combinations to get 30? I mean, it could be 1 and 30, but that's not going to give me 1 if I add. And remember, one of these will be positive and one will be negative. I could have 2 and 15. What else could I have? 3 and 10. I don't think that's going to work. What else? Is there anything else that multiplies to give me 30? 5 and 6. Now remember, I'm supposed to multiply these to get a negative. So one of these is going to be positive, one's going to be negative. And when I add it, I'm going to get a negative 1. So which one of these numbers needs to be negative?
I mean 6.
The 6. So I think I need a negative 6 and a positive 5. Let's double check that. If I multiply that, do I get negative 30? Yes. If I add that, do I get negative 1? Yes. Okay. Would somebody want to come show us what we should write down here? It's a real easy write with your finger kind of thing. Morgan, you want to do it for us? It won't, I promise it won't bite. It won't shock you. We can always fix it if we need to. Okay, Taylor, you come on down. You can do it. I promise. Won't be a problem. Come on. I'll help you if you get stuck. Shut up. So 2x squared minus 6 minus 6. I'm gonna write this. You just use your finger. Okay. Squared. Yeah, except it's not negative, it's positive. Oops. That's all right. You can just make it a plus. That's all right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So 2x squared. She's bringing it down. Oh, wait a minute. You need the square on the x. Oh, there you go. Minus 6.
Do you say x?
Yes, because we're replacing minus 1x with 2 terms. So it'll be a minus 6x.
Plus.
Plus
Just 5 or 5x?
What do y'all think? Does it need to be just plus 5 or plus 5x? It's got to, yeah, because those two terms have to add together to give us minus 1x. So they both have to have x's in them.
Minus 15.
Minus 15 on the end. Good job. All right. Where are we going to go from here? Y'all remember?
I don't know how you do
Yes,
that.
that's okay. That's okay. We're going to factor out a GCF. Now, 2x times what gives you 2x squared?
X.
All right. And 2x times what gives you negative 6x? Minus
That's
3.
30.
Y'all agree with her? Yeah, good job. Yeah, keep going. All right. Now, something needs to go in front of that 5. What is it?
I'll put
Yes, squeeze the in that plus sign because we got to bring down the plus sign. Then you factored out a 5. X minus 3. Perfect. And then do you know now how to fill in the bottom parentheses?
Yeah.
All right. So what goes in one of them?
I'll do what you did last time.
And the order really doesn't matter. Okay.
Terrible 5, but that's a 5.
You did a good job. Thank you, Taylor. What do y'all think? Okay, so let me ask you guys a question. Is this hard? What do you think? Is it hard? But are there a lot of steps, kind of? Yeah, I'll tell you what the hard part is. The hard part is learning what question to ask yourself, because I will tell you, whenever I teach this, usually what happens is students will sit and, because I'm asking you questions as we go through it, you say, this is easy. And you get home and you try to do your homework and you can't figure out how to start. Because and the reason I'm asking you these questions is I'm trying to train you to be able to think through the questions you need to be asking yourself. So whenever we start, and you guys have gotten pretty good at telling me, the first thing we always look for is what? Greatest common factor. So you factor that guy out. And then after you factor that out, if there are 3 terms left, that's where we try to do this. You got to do A times C. So basically, first step was you factor out the GCF. And if you look at these instructions, if you can, sometimes there's not one. Second step is you identify the A and the C and multiply those together. That's going to help you figure out the signs of the numbers you need. Third step, you identify what B is. That, remember, your numbers are going to multiply to give you this. They're going to add to give you this. And then you come up with these numbers, okay? Once you get these numbers, you replace them here. So that would be like your step 4. Then you factor out your common factor again, and then you can get to the end. That's a lot of steps, honestly. But if you practice and you learn which questions you need to ask yourself, you'll get through it typically much faster and easier, okay? Now, we're actually going to hold off on like 8, 9, and 10 until after we test. We're going to do that later. So that leaves us with 6 and 7 that we haven't done. But if I told you on our test, what we're going to have will be a simpler AC method. Okay, let me show you what I mean by that. We're going to clear this off. Well, come on. All right, and if I were to ask you to factor this, how many of you say, I'm good with that. I'll be okay on the test if it looks like that? Okay. That's not everybody, but that's most of you. How many of you say, I still need to go through that AC method thing if I'm going to get this factored, because I wouldn't know what to do with that unless I use all those steps? Y'all want to go through it together? Okay. Who would like to come be our scribe and write it down as we go? Not that you have to know all the steps to do, but you're just going to practice with the writing down. You want to do it, Patrick?
Well, if I do it, I'll do it. I won't do the steps. I'll just do it. All right, yeah.
Yeah, you can, well, and that's fine. You're just going to write down what we tell you, okay? So he's going to be our scribe. So you guys help out. What would you look for first?
Factors of 9 and 6.
Well, first thing, what were you saying? Yeah, we look for a common factor, and is there a common factor other than 1? No. So then we're going to go to, this is what we're going to do is practice if you're doing the AC method. So what would you tell Patrick he should write down? Very good, Bryce. Okay, Bryce said right, A times C over to the side. Yeah, just, well,
A is
actually,
one,
right above
right?
that, if you'll just put the A, so we can do A dot C. There you go. And then you're putting in 1 for A. C is how much? 6. So if you multiply together, you get 6. Okay? Now, what else? What does that mean that I'm looking for? 2 numbers that do what? Multiply together to give us 6, and 6 is positive. So what do we know about signs? Are they going to be the same or are they going to be different? If I multiply and I get a positive, they're the same, and they're going to have to be the same sign as what? They have to be the same sign as what B is, because remember, they're going to add up to give us B, and B is a -9. So that would mean I'd need 2 numbers that it's a negative and a negative. Does that make sense? Okay, so then what do you ask yourself? And this is what you were saying just a minute ago. Tell us again.
Factors of 9 that add up to 6.
Is that going the right direction? And multiply to give us 9, add to give us 6? Or actually, it's what is it? It's got to multiply to give you whatever A times C is. So it's got to multiply to give you 6, but add to give you -9. Now, is there a pair of numbers that does that? Bryce just shook his head no. What do y'all think? Can you multiply 2 numbers, get +6, add those 2 numbers, and you get a -9? Because the only thing you multiply to get 6 is what? Okay, 3 times 2 or 1 times 6. I can't add up either one of those to get 9, can I? So what am I supposed to do if I can't multiply to get 6 and add to get -9? It's prime or not factorable. Sometimes those show up. That's a little sneaky. But you check it, and if that's what happens, you are going to have to put prime. Thank you, Patrick. Okay, so I'm going to put,
one.
yeah, you want to do the next one? Okay, so let's put a different one up here. Let's factor. And this time we'll do x squared. Let's try that one. Okay, so y'all talk it through. Tell him what he should look for first. I'm looking for the common factor. Do I have one other than 1? No. So then you're going to do what? You want to write down what A times C is. So A times C is 1 times 36, which is
36.
all right. So what does that tell you about your pair of numbers? They're going to do what to give you 36? Hold it, hold it, hold it. What did we do to get 36? Add or multiply?
Multiply.
So our numbers are going to have to multiply to give us 36. Now, 2 numbers multiply and give us a positive. What do you know about their signs? They're going to be what? They're going to be the same. And which sign will they be? And you know that why? Because the B is negative. There you go. So we need a negative and a negative. And B is
13.
a -13. So what would be the right pair of numbers? It's got to multiply to give us 36, but what else? Add to give us negative 13. What can you do? All right, so start talking to me about numbers you can multiply to get 36. Okay, I got 1 and 36. I've got 6 and 6. What else? You said 13 and 2? That's 26. That's okay. So let's kind of do this methodically. Okay, I know 1 times 36. Will 2 go into 36 evenly? How many times? 2 times what's 36? 18. Remember, I'm trying to get them to add up to give me negative 13, so that's not it. Will 3 go into 36? 12 times. That still doesn't add up to give us 13, but we're getting closer. What else? 4 and 9. That multiplies to give me 36. Would that add to give me 13?
Yes.
Did you just find the paper? You can use a calculator to help you. You can take 36 and just start dividing numbers to see which ones go evenly. That's a smart thing to do. So tell Patrick what, now that we know we want to use 4 and 9, what's he going to do with the negative 4 and the negative 9? So he replaces which one in the, which term? The first, second, or third? Second term gets replaced. Keep the x squared. Okay, but what needs to go with that minus 4 and minus 9? Yeah, the x is good. Okay. Then what happens? Look at 2 at a time. So first pair, not Kelsey, what she write? In that first pair, what's he doing? Yes, x is his common factor. And then tell him to open a parenthesis and what's going to go inside? X. Well, x times what gives him x squared? X. And then x times, so you need an x, and then x times what gives him negative 4x? Negative 4. So x minus 4 is in the parentheses. Then he needs to write what? Minus sign. Bring down the minus sign. And then when he looks at the second pair of numbers, what's he going to put down? The 9, because that's the common factor. And then in the parentheses, he's got x minus 4. Good job. Okay? And is he ready to write the answer now? How is this factor?
X minus 9.
X minus 9 times x minus 4. Thank you, Patrick. And then how would he check that if he wanted to make sure you've done it right? Either use FOIL or the box. Okay. Now let me. Let's see.